The first morning Evan Cross stepped onto Valeria Base felt like stepping into another universe. The air carried a soft silver glow from the twin moons rising behind the metallic towers, and every doorway hummed with quiet alien energy that made his skin feel alive. He tried to act calm, but inside he felt like a rookie thrown into a dream he wasn't ready for. Humans and Valerians trained together here, at least in theory, but it only took a single glance for Evan to realize that most humans kept to their own groups, while the aliens moved with elegant silence, their glowing skin shifting like living starlight, and their strange tentacle hair flowing softly with every breath. Among them was someone he couldn't stop noticing, an alien girl who looked both ethereal and lonely at the same time. Her name whispered through the halls like a rumor. Lyria, the Valerian princess who rarely spoke to anyone. Her tentacles moved like ribbons underwater, glowing faint blue and curling gently around her shoulders as she walked. She wasn't like the others. There was a softness in her presence, a quiet pain in her eyes, something unspoken that drew his attention without warning. Evan had heard a few things about her, that she kept to herself, that she was too important to approach, that Valerians viewed emotional expression as sacred and dangerous, and that touching their tentacles or even complimenting them could break ancient etiquette. But Evan didn't know the last part fully. He had skimmed the briefing at midnight before his shuttle launch and didn't catch half the cultural rules they warned about. He just saw a girl who looked alone in a place full of noise. During morning drills, he watched her, not in a strange way, but in a human way, noticing the way she stood apart from both species, the way she avoided eye contact, the way her tentacles wrapped around her arms when she was nervous, and he wondered what she might be thinking, whether she felt out of place just like he did. Their squad was assigned a shared training field, and Evan ended up standing only a few meters away from her as they practiced formation drills. The humans stomped their boots in firm rhythm while the Valerians moved like dancers, silent and precise, creating a strange but beautiful contrast under the rising sunlight. He caught her glancing at him once, just briefly, her bright silver eyes flickering with something he couldn't read. Maybe fear, maybe curiosity, maybe confusion about why he looked at her with something other than fear. Because most humans secretly feared the Valerians, even if they didn't say it out loud. Their glowing tentacles, their eerie calm, their psychic instincts, everything about them felt otherworldly. When the drill ended and everyone relaxed, Lyria stepped toward the edge of the field, her tentacles shimmering faintly as if responding to the sunlight. Evan walked past her, not planning to say anything, but then something inside him nudged him forward. Maybe the human instinct to break silence. Maybe the simple kindness of wanting someone to feel included. Maybe curiosity about the mysterious girl whose presence felt like a quiet storm waiting to awaken. He smiled at her without thinking, his voice warm and natural as he said, "Your tentacles look great today." It was light, friendly, innocent, the kind of compliment a human might give about hair or style. Just a simple human moment meant to ease tension. But the air froze, the world went silent. Lyria stopped breathing for a heartbeat. Then another, then another. Her tentacles twitched violently, shimmering with sudden streaks of pink and gold, colors he had never seen before, colors that made several Valerians gasp and step back in shock. One dropped their training spear. Another whispered a word Evan didn't recognize but could tell it wasn't good. Evan's smile faded as confusion spread across his face. Lyria stared at him with widened eyes, her pupils expanding like blooming stars, her breathing turning shaky and uneven, as if her body didn't know how to respond to what she just felt. To her people, a compliment about tentacles wasn't casual. It wasn't friendly, it wasn't harmless. It was something reserved for sacred intimacy, for destined partners, for the ancient bond that Valerians believed tied two souls across lifetimes. Evan had unknowingly spoken the words that Valerians only said to someone they were spiritually connected to. And he had said them as easily as breathing. Lyria took a slow step back, her tentacles curling around her body as if trying to hide their glowing reaction. Yet they betrayed her by lighting up even brighter, dancing with colors of instinct and emotion she couldn't control. Her voice came out barely above a whisper, trembling, fragile. "You do not understand what you have done," Evan tried to speak, to explain. But she turned away before he could form a single word, her tentacles rippling like a living storm behind her as she hurried toward the shadows of the corridor. The moment she disappeared, every Valerian eye turned toward Evan, their expressions a mix of fear, disbelief, and something that felt almost like accusation. Whispering words he didn't understand, words that made his stomach twist. He stood there completely lost, unaware that his innocent human compliment had just triggered an ancient bond sign, something Valerians believed could change destiny itself, far away down the hallway unseen by him. Lyria pressed her hand against the wall, her tentacles glowing a deep crimson, a color that meant her instincts had already chosen him. Even if she hadn't and nothing on Valeria base would ever be the same again, Lyria didn't stop walking until she reached the quietest corner of the base, the corridor lights painting soft blue lines across her trembling hands. Her tentacles curled tightly around her shoulders as if trying to shield her from a storm she could not escape. Every breath she took shook her chest because the reaction she had felt in the training field was not supposed to happen. Not to her. Not to a princess, not to someone trained to control every instinct from childhood. She leaned against the cold metallic wall, her heart racing in a rhythm that didn't belong to her alone. Something inside her pulsed with an echo, a faint presence that felt like another heartbeat trying to sync with hers, and she knew it was his. The human who didn't know what he had awakened. Valerians were taught from birth that tentacles were living extensions of the soul, reacting only to truth, destiny, and bonds that could not be forged by choice, only by fate. So when the colors burst from her tentacles the moment Evan spoke, she felt something ancient stir inside her, something she had been warned about her entire life. The bond sign, the first spark of a connection Valerians believed tied two spirits in a way no counsel, no law, no fear could break. She closed her eyes, her mind shaking from the memory of his voice, the warmth in it, the sincerity, the softness, and her tentacles glowed again in a shy ripple she couldn't control. "This cannot be happening," she whispered as her throat tightened. Because a princess bonding with a human was forbidden, unthinkable, dangerous. A crime that could fracture political alliances, a scandal that could topple her mother's rule. But her instincts didn't care about politics. They only cared about the human who spoke to her as if she were just a girl and not a royal alien. Hidden behind rules and fear, back in the training field, Evan stood frozen. The Valerian guards surrounding him in a tense half-circle, their silver armor reflecting the morning sunlight in sharp angles. One of them stepped closer and pointed a ceremonial spear toward his chest, not in violence but in warning, in disbelief, in fear of what had just happened. "What did you say to the princess?" the guard demanded, his voice cold and layered with the soft echo of Valerian resonance. Evan raised his hand slowly, palms open, his eyebrows lifting in confusion. "I just told her tentacles looked nice." A murmur traveled through the alien ranks like a wave, a ripple of shock and outrage. Some whispered ancient words he didn't recognize. Others looked pale as if they had witnessed something sacred and forbidden break right before their eyes. "That is not a casual phrase for our kind," another guard said, stepping forward with a trembling breath. "Such words are spoken only between destined partners, between hearts already intertwined by our ancestors." Evan blinked, his throat tightening as the weight of misunderstanding settled on him. "I didn't know, nobody told me. I wasn't trying to offend her." But the guards weren't angry, they were afraid, confused, uncertain how a human had triggered something that Valerians believed only their own could awaken. Because if the princess's tentacles reacted, it meant her instincts had accepted him in a way no law could undo. Evan's squad commander rushed to him, pulling him aside as alien eyes watched with caution. "Cross, you need to be more careful. You can't just say things like that. They have rules about compliments." "I didn't mean anything," Evan muttered, running a hand through his hair. "I just thought she looked... I don't know, I thought it would make her smile." His voice cracked with frustration, not at the aliens, but at himself. Because he never wanted to hurt anyone, never wanted to cause trouble. He only wanted to make a lonely girl feel noticed. As he walked out of the training field with the commander, he glanced down the hallway where she had disappeared, wondering why she looked so scared, wondering why her eyes carried a secret like a quiet storm waiting to break, wondering why her reaction made his chest tighten with something he couldn't put into words. That night Evan lay on his bunk, unable to sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw her expression, the trembling light in her tentacles, the shock, the fear, the unspoken emotion, and no matter how much he tried to shut it out, he felt something pulling at him, like a whisper at the edge of his thoughts calling his name in a voice not fully his own. He turned over and stared at the ceiling, his heartbeat strangely uneven. What is happening to me across the base? In a private chamber shielded by layers of alien energy, Lyria sat curled on her bed, her tentacles wrapped around her knees, glowing faint gold as if caught in an internal struggle. She tried to meditate, tried to silence her instincts, but every time her mind cleared, she felt a warm presence brushing against her thoughts. Gentle, steady, confused but kind, and it terrified her. Princesses were trained to resist bond instincts, but she felt her control breaking like fragile glass. Her tentacles glowed again in a slow pulse, responding to that distant presence she couldn't block. The presence of a human whose voice lingered inside her like a memory refusing to fade. Suddenly her chamber door slid open and 2 royal guards stepped inside, their armor reflecting deep blue light. "Princess Lyria, the council has requested your presence." Her heart sank. Her tentacles stiffened because she already knew why. They had felt her reaction. They had sensed the awakening, and the council would never allow a Valerian princess to bond with a human soldier. As she stood, her legs trembling, she whispered the truth she feared most. "I cannot stop what has begun." And far across the base, Evan woke with a start, a cold shiver running down his spine, as if someone far away had spoken directly into his heart, calling him toward a destiny he didn't yet understand. The council chamber of Valeria Base was carved from shimmering crystal that caught every ray of light and fractured it into slow-moving colors. But tonight those colors felt cold and sharp, flickering like judgment in motion. Lyria stood in the center of the circular room, her tentacles dim and wrapped tightly around her arms as if she could hide the trembling glow beneath them. Her heartbeat felt heavy, almost painful, not for herself, but for the human she had dragged into danger without meaning to. Around her sat the 12 elders of the Valerian High Council, their eyes glowing like distant stars, each expression carved in stone. The eldest member leaned forward with a calm voice that carried centuries of expectation. "Princess Lyria, tell us exactly what happened." Her throat tightened, because everything inside her wished she could lie, wished she could pretend her tentacles had reacted by accident. But Valerians could sense dishonesty the way humans sensed heat, and she had no strength left to hide truth. She drew in a slow breath, feeling the echo of Evan's distant heartbeat deep within her instincts, and whispered, "The human spoke to me, and my tentacles reacted." Murmurs rippled through the chamber like a cold wind. The elders exchanged worried glances. One of them folded their hands with visible tension. "Reacted how?" Lyria closed her eyes, ashamed, afraid, helpless. They glowed in bond colors. Silence fell so heavy it felt like the air itself had frozen. The bond colors were not simply emotion. They were destiny, instinct, ancient law written into their very biology. Something no princess should ever feel for a human. Something that could change the future of 2 civilizations if allowed to grow. Another elder spoke, voice sharp and laced with fear. "A human cannot trigger a Valerian bond. It is impossible. It violates everything we know." But a softer voice countered, trembling with a truth they wished wasn't real. And yet her tentacles did react, and the bond mark began forming. Lyria felt heat rise in her cheeks, a rare sign of alien embarrassment, and she looked down at the floor, unable to meet their eyes, unable to hide the truth she wished she could erase. "I did not choose it," she whispered. "But I felt it." The eldest elder stood, robes flowing like liquid starlight. "Then the human is a threat to our traditions, to our laws, to our future." Those words pierced her like a blade. Her tentacles curled tighter. Her breath shook in her chest. "He is not a threat," she said softly, almost pleading. "He meant no harm. He did not know our customs, but the council had already made up their minds, fear shaping their logic, tradition shaping their hearts. Humans and Valerians cannot bond," the eldest declared. "It would destabilize the balance between our species. It must be prevented immediately." Lyria felt something inside her twist painfully, the bond instinct flaring in distress because even though she barely knew Evan, the connection thrummed through her like a living pulse, something that did not care for rules or fear or politics, something ancient and quiet and impossibly strong. Meanwhile, Evan sat inside a dim holding room, unaware of the storm unfolding around him. The walls shimmered with alien energy that made him feel like his thoughts echoed inside his own skull. He ran his hand through his hair, pacing back and forth, trying to make sense of the strange dreams, the tug in his chest, the way his emotions felt stretched toward someone he barely understood. He pressed a hand to his heart, confused, breath shaky. "Why does it feel like someone's scared?" he whispered, not realizing he was feeling Lyria's fear through the half-formed bond pulsing between them. The door slid open and a human commander stepped inside, his expression tense. "Cross, you need to prepare yourself. Things are getting complicated," Evan frowned. "Complicated how?" The commander hesitated, rubbing his forehead. "The Valerian Council thinks you activated some kind of instinct in their princess. They believe you triggered a bond." Evan blinked hard, a disbelieving laugh escaping him. A bond. From a compliment. It's not a normal compliment for them, the commander said. Voice low. You said something sacred, something reserved for... Well, something like marriage. Evan felt the ground shift beneath him. A cold wave washing through his stomach as he remembered her expression. The shock. The fear. The trembling. And he whispered to himself, I didn't know, I didn't mean... I know, the commander interrupted gently. But the aliens are scared. And scared people make dangerous decisions. Back in the council chamber, Lyria suddenly flinched, clutching her chest, because she felt something from afar, a ripple through the bond, a wave of human worry crashing softly through her instincts. She whispered under her breath, almost without realizing, Evan is afraid. The council heard it and exchanged alarmed glances. The bond has already connected your senses, one elder gasped. This cannot continue. We must separate you before it grows, another insisted. Before fate locks it in place, Lyria stepped back, her tentacles trembling violently, their glow flickering between fear and instinct. You cannot tear apart a bond once it begins, she whispered. You will break us both. But the elders rose together in unanimous decision, their voices heavy with finality. The human must be expelled at sunrise. The word slammed into Lyria's heart like a thunderstrike. Her breath hitched, her pulse stuttered. Her tentacles flashed with painful bursts of color she couldn't control. Far across the base, at that exact moment, Evan collapsed to his knees, gripping his chest as a sharp, invisible pain tore through him like claws. He didn't understand it. He didn't know why it hurt. But he whispered her name under his breath as if she were standing right there beside him. Lyria. And somewhere in the council chamber, the princess whispered the same name in return, her voice breaking like fragile glass, because destiny had already chosen, and neither of them knew how to stop it now. Night fell over Valeria base like a slow-moving shadow, the twin moons glowing faintly behind drifting clouds as if the sky itself sensed the storm that was coming. The corridors hummed with restless energy, soldiers rushing, alarms whispering in low pulses, and deep inside the base, Evan Cross sat on the cold floor of the holding room. Feeling a tightness in his chest that didn't belong to him alone, he rubbed his sternum, breathing unevenly, because every time he tried to calm down, he felt a distant emotion brushing against him, a trembling fear, a quiet plea, a warmth that hurt in a way he couldn't explain. It was like someone else's heartbeat was tied to his, rising and falling with his breath, calling to him through a thread he couldn't see. He closed his eyes and whispered without thinking, Lyria, are you safe? Across the base, the princess stood on the balcony of her private chamber, the cool night breeze brushing against her glowing skin, her tentacles wrapped tightly around her shoulders as if trying to hold in the emotions threatening to burst out. She felt his voice echo inside her mind like a whisper carried on the wind, gentle, confused, reaching for her without knowing how, and her breath caught in her throat as she clutched the railing. She whispered his name too, barely audible. Evan. Her instincts pulsed with painful clarity, the bond mark shimmering beneath her skin in faint gold streaks, reacting to his fear, his confusion, his presence, and she felt something inside her breaking, not because of the bond itself, but because the council had ordered him expelled at sunrise. A forced separation that could shatter both of them at their core, and before she could steady her breath, the alarms erupted, sharp and violent, flooding the base with crimson light. A deep mechanical roar shook the walls, a tremor rippling under her feet. The windows flashing bright white as explosions lit the sky above the training fields. The Draxian horde had arrived. The ground shuddered as the first impact hit, then another, then another. A rain of fire carving through the outer walls, alien. Ships descending like metallic predators with glowing jaws. Lyria steadied herself, her tentacles flaring out with instinctive energy, their colors shifting into warrior hues of blue and gold as every part of her prepared for battle. Soldiers sprinted through the corridors, human and Valerian alike, but the psychic interference flooding the base made the Valerians stumble, their senses overwhelmed by the enemy's weapon frequency, a sound that clawed through their minds like invisible shards. Lyria felt the wave hit her too, forcing her to grip the wall until her vision steadied, her tentacles spasming in shock. And through the pain she felt Evan collapse onto the floor in his holding room. The psychic attack slamming into him through their half-formed bond, his breath choking in his throat as he struggled to stay conscious, one hand pressed to his heart as if trying to anchor himself to something solid. The guards scrambled in panic, unsure what was happening to him. But Lyria knew instantly. The bond was reacting to danger. linking their pain, their fear, their struggle. And if one of them fell, the other would follow. Without hesitation, she sprinted through the corridor, her bare feet barely touching the ground, her tentacles slicing through the air with glowing fury as she followed the pull in her heart, guiding her toward him. The base shook again as the Draxion forces breached the outer hall. Metal screaming, weapons blazing, soldiers shouting as smoke filled the air in thick choking waves. Evan struggled to rise, gripping the edge of the bench, his breath shallow, the interference crawling through his skull like a swarm of needles. He forced his eyes open and saw the cell door glitching as the power grid flickered from the attack. Then suddenly the door slid open with a violent hiss, and before he could react, Lyria was there, standing in the doorway with her chest rising and falling in sharp breaths, her eyes glowing with fierce determination. Their gazes locked and something inside both of them snapped into place. An instinct older than memory, a pull deeper than fear. A connection neither could resist. "Come with me," she whispered, her voice shaking yet strong. "You cannot stay here. The enemy will find you first. They hunt bond energy." Evan didn't understand the words fully, but he could feel the truth in her trembling breath. He stepped toward her, and the moment he crossed the threshold, his chest loosened, the pain dimming as her presence steadied him, her tentacles shifting into a protective circle behind her, shining faint gold like the soft glow of a rising dawn. The corridor exploded behind them as a Draxion breach charge detonated, throwing debris and smoke through the hall. Lyria grabbed his wrist and pulled him into the next passage, their steps echoing through the trembling metal floor, alarms screaming overhead. "Why are they attacking now?" Evan asked, voice breathless as they ran. "Because of the bond," she whispered, her voice heavy with fear. "They can feel it, they want it. They believe two linked souls can power their weapon. They will tear worlds apart to capture us." Evan swallowed hard, adrenaline surging through him, the weight of her words sinking into his bones. "So what do we do?" Her tentacles wrapped around his arm protectively, their glow intensifying with every second. "We fight fate together," she breathed. "Or we die together. But we do not run from destiny." Another explosion rocked the hall, shaking them both to their knees. But neither let go of the other. And in that moment, in the middle of chaos and fire, the bond flared so bright inside them that the air vibrated with its energy. The Draxions were close. The council was divided. The base was falling, and destiny had already chosen its path. Together they rose, together they ran. Together they faced the storm that awaited them in the burning night. The night around Valeria Base had turned into a burning storm, smoke rising like black rivers twisting toward the moons, the ground shaking beneath every footstep as Evan and Lyria ran through the fractured corridors, guided by the bond pulling their hearts in the same direction with every breath they took. Fires roared behind shattered walls, sparks drifting through the air like broken stars. Human soldiers shouted orders. Valerian warriors fought with glowing energy blades. And above it all, the unnatural screech of Draxion machines echoed like the cry of a metal beast. Shaking the base to its core, Evan felt every pulse of danger through the bond, not as thoughts but as instinct, as if Lyria's senses flowed into him like a current of alien light. When her heartbeat jumped, he felt it. When she sensed movement, he tensed. When she feared anything, his body reacted before his mind understood why. It was terrifying, overwhelming, and strangely comforting all at once. They reached a collapsed hallway where smoke curled around the broken floor. The metal glowing orange where fire licked through the structure. Lyria stopped suddenly, her tentacles rising around her like a living shield, shimmering with blue and gold warnings. Evan tightened his grip on the metal pipe he had taken earlier. "What is it?" Lyria's gaze focused on the shadows ahead, voice barely a whisper. "Draxion scouts, 3 of them, 1 level below. They are climbing up the vents," Evan swallowed, trying to push down the fear swirling in his stomach. But Lyria sensed it immediately through the bond, and her tentacles softened for a heartbeat, glowing with a gentle warmth as if assuring him she was right beside him. "Stay close," she breathed. "They hunt energy, emotion, fear. Everything you feel they can track, but if you stay near me, I can shield us." Evan nodded, stepping closer until their shoulders brushed. And the instant they touched, the bond flared like warm electricity inside them, steadying his breath, filling him with a quiet strength that didn't feel human or alien, but something in between, something shared, something meant. The vents shattered open in a spray of sparks and metal, 3 Draxion creatures crawling out with metallic limbs that clanged against the floor, their bodies shaped like twisted armor fused to living flesh. Their glowing red eyes locked instantly onto Lyria, as if she were the brightest flame in a dark room. Their jaws opened in a hungry metallic hiss, the sound spreading through the hallway like a psychic knife. Evan's legs trembled, but Lyria stepped in front of him, her tentacles whipping outward in a fierce arc, glowing with brilliant pulses of golden energy that cracked through the air like living lightning. The first Draxion lunged, but Lyria's tentacles moved with a speed Evan couldn't follow, striking its chest with a burst of blue fire that sent it crashing into the wall, sparks scattering like a shower of burning stars. The second creature charged straight for Evan, but before he could raise his improvised weapon, Lyria's arm wrapped around his waist, pulling him backward as she unleashed a telekinetic blast that sent the creature spiraling across the corridor, metal screeching as it hit the ground in a smoking heap. The third Draxion was larger, its armor reinforced with dark plates that glowed red. It roared and hurled itself at both of them with terrifying speed. Evan reacted without thinking, swinging the metal pipe with all his strength, the impact ringing through the air as he struck its head, buying just enough time for Lyria to leap forward, her tentacles wrapping the creature's limb and twisting with a force that cracked metal like bone. The creature fell, sparks bursting from its joints, and Lyria ended it with a single glowing strike that echoed like thunder through the hall. Breathless, Evan braced his hand on the wall as the adrenaline surged inside him, every nerve vibrating with terror and awe. Are all Valerians this strong? Lyria turned to him, her glowing eyes softening. Only when protecting someone the bond chooses. Her words froze him. A shiver traveled down his back as her tentacles curled gently, their glow sinking into warm gold. He didn't know what to say, didn't know what to feel, but something inside him recognized the truth instinctively, like hearing a memory he never lived. Another explosion rocked the base, this one closer, sending dust raining from the ceiling. The lights flickering violently, the ground trembling as the enemy breached deeper into the structure. Lyria grabbed his hand, her voice urgent. We cannot stay here. The Draxion commander will sense what happened. He will come for us himself. The bond energy is too strong now, too bright. They ran again deeper into the base, passing wounded soldiers, shattered walls, broken beams glowing hot from fire. Evan stopped to pull a trapped human out from under debris, and Lyria used her tentacles to lift the beam effortlessly, surprising everyone around them with her strength, her grace, her silent determination. Valerians watched them, stunned, whispers spreading through the chaos. The princess fighting beside a human, protecting him, moving in sync with him as if guided by invisible threads of fate. As they reached the inner chamber, the psychic wave hit again, a sharp slicing energy that made both of them stumble. Evan pressed his palms to his temples, grimacing as the interference clawed through his mind. But Lyria caught him before he fell, pulling him into her arms as her tentacles wrapped around him protectively, shielding him from the worst of the psychic attack. Her voice trembled against his ear. Do not let go. I can share my strength, focus on me, breathe with me. Evan held on to her, their breaths sinking, the world around them fading into a swirl of smoke and trembling metal, the bond glowing inside them like a heartbeat of light slowly pushing back the psychic roar. And then the air shifted. A cold presence spread through the hall, a shadow darker than the smoke moved at the far end of the corridor. The Draxion commander had arrived. Its towering silhouette filled the passage, mechanical limbs glowing with red energy, eyes like burning coals fixed on the two souls whose bond could power a weapon strong enough to tear worlds apart. Lyria tightened her hold on Evan, her voice barely a whisper yet full of unshakable fire. They will not take you. And the commander stepped forward, hunting them both with destiny lighting its path. The Draxion commander stepped out of the smoke like a nightmare given metal and bone, its towering frame wrapped in black armor that flickered with red veins of pulsing energy, its mechanical claws scraping sparks from the floor with each step, as if the ground itself flinched under its weight. Evan felt the air tighten in his lungs the moment the creature's gaze found them. Cold and hungry and ancient, a predator that did not hunt flesh but the invisible glow of souls bound together by destiny. Lyria moved in front of Evan without hesitation, her tentacles rising like a shield of living light, their glow shifting into fierce shades of gold and deep blue, every color pulsing with instinct and fear and unspoken love she didn't yet understand. Her breath shook, but her stance was unbreakable, her voice low and steady as she whispered, "Do not move, do not speak, stay behind me." But the commander's psychic voice slid into their minds like a blade dipped in ice, the sound not spoken through the air but carved into their thoughts. Valerian princess, human soldier, the bond between you is incomplete yet powerful. You cannot hide its light from me. Evan flinched, gripping the wall to keep himself steady as the creature's presence pressed against his skull, pushing into places he didn't know his mind even had. He felt Lyraya's tentacles tighten around him in response, the bond pulsing hard like a heartbeat trying to shield him from the psychic intrusion. The commander tilted its head, its red eyes narrowing. Your connection will open the wormhole gate for us. Your shared energy will power the rift core. Willingly or unwillingly, you will serve. Lyraya's breath broke with rage, her tentacles whipping outward with a crackle of energy. We will never serve the Draxion. The commander's metallic jaw twisted into something resembling amusement. You misunderstand, princess. You are already serving. Every fear, every breath, every instinct you share amplifies the resonance we require. Before she could react, the commander unleashed a psychic wave that slammed into both of them like a wall of lightning. Evan fell to his knees, gripping his head as pain tore through him in sharp, blinding flashes. Lyraya cried out and dropped beside him, pulling him into her arms as her tentacles spread around them, absorbing as much of the psychic force as she could, every pulse of energy burning through her veins like fire. Stay with me, she whispered, her voice trembling as she pressed her forehead to his. Breathe with me. Feel me. Do not let go. The bond pulsed again, bright and desperate, their heartbeats syncing, their breaths aligning, the pain splitting between them so neither collapsed completely. The commander's eyes widened at the strength of their connection, glowing brighter with every second as if feeding on the energy radiating between their souls. It raised its clawed hand and the ground beneath them cracked open, revealing a hidden chamber glowing with swirling red light. The rift core pulsed beneath the floor like a beating heart of molten metal, the air trembling with unstable power. Lyraya's eyes widened in horror as realization hit her. They built the wormhole device under the base. The commander stepped aside, gesturing with a cruel mechanical grace. Enter the rift. Your bond will ignite it. Your combined essence will stabilize it. With your energy, we will tear a passage into the Valerian homeworld. Before they could react, the floor shifted, a telekinetic force pulling them downward toward the glowing pit. Evan grabbed Lyraya's hand. She held onto him with all her strength, but the psychic pull was too strong and they were dragged into the chamber, the air thick with energy that tasted like metal and storm. The rift core towered over them, swirling with red and black currents, lightning crawling across its surface as if it were alive. The commander descended with smooth mechanical steps, sealing the exit behind them. Evan felt something inside the core calling to him, echoing, feeding on the bond, tugging at his consciousness like an invisible hook burying into his chest. He stumbled forward, gasping. Lyraya, something is pulling me. Her arms wrapped around his waist instantly, her tentacles glowing fiercely as they tried to anchor him. Fight it, Evan. Do not let the rift take your mind. But the core flared with a sudden burst of energy that struck Evan like a shockwave. Lifting him off his feet and slamming him against the crystalline wall, he cried out as pain seared through his body. Lyraya screamed and ran to him, but the commander caught her mid-stride, gripping her with clawed limbs that dug into her skin. Evan felt her pain explode through the bond, a bright stabbing agony that made his vision blur. He forced himself up, every muscle shaking, his voice breaking. Let her go. The commander's voice echoed, smug and resonant. The human resists more than expected, impressive but pointless. Lyraya twisted in its grip, her tentacles flaring with raw power, golden lightning sparking across her skin, her voice rising in a cry of pure instinct. Evan, complete the bond now. His breath caught, his heart pounding in chaos. He didn't understand, but he trusted her, trusted the look in her eyes, trusted the way the bond pulsed between them like a living voice. He staggered forward, reaching toward her as she reached toward him, their palms inches apart, the air vibrating with energy. The commander lunged forward to stop them, but it was too late. Their hands touched. The bond exploded. Light erupted around them like a supernova. The core trembled. The entire chamber shook. The Draxion commander roared in fury as the energy slipped from its control. Lyraya's voice trembled with awe and pain as the light wrapped around them. We are one now. Nothing can break us. And the wormhole gate began to collapse, dragging everything toward destruction. With Evan and Lyria caught at the heart of the storm, the chamber shook like a living beast trying to tear itself apart. Red and black lightning spiraling around the collapsing rift core as if the universe itself was screaming. Energy roared through the air, tearing cracks into the walls, pulling everything toward the swirling heart of the wormhole that had begun to fold in on itself. And in the middle of that storm, Evan and Lyria stood locked in a blinding pulse of shared light. Their hands pressed together, their breaths merging, their heartbeats sinking into a single rhythm that drowned out the chaos around them. The bond exploded inside them like a star being born, not violent but deep and warm and unstoppable, a flood of memories, instincts, and emotions crashing between their minds. Evan saw flashes of Lyria's childhood, her loneliness, her quiet strength, her fear of her own destiny. And she saw him too, the boy who grew up fighting for a place to belong, the man who tried to make everyone else feel safe even when he didn't feel safe himself. Every piece of their lives folding together with gentle clarity. The Draxion commander roared against the storm, its metallic limbs tearing at the floor as the pull of the collapsing rift dragged it closer. Red sparks flying from its armor as it fought against the vacuum, its voice rattling through the chamber like a broken machine. Your bond was meant to serve us, not destroy us. But Lyria stepped forward, her tentacles spread behind her like golden wings of living fire, her voice rising with a power she had never felt before. This bond was never yours to take. The commander lunged, claws slicing through the air, but the surge of bond energy threw it backward, slamming it into the rift's edge where red lightning wrapped around its body, tearing pieces of armor away as it fought to break free, its mechanical scream echoing like a dying storm. Evan staggered, the light inside him dimming for a moment as the rift's pull dragged at his mind. He gripped Lyria's arm and whispered through shaking breath, "We need to close it, or the whole base will go with us." Lyria nodded, her eyes glowing gold as she looked at him, the bond pulsing between them like a living flame. Together, they turned toward the collapsing rift core, the air vibrating so violently it felt like their bones were humming, the swirling energy pulling at their skin, their clothes, their very breath. But they held each other's hands tightly, anchoring each other in the middle of the storm, and with a deep, trembling breath, Lyria pressed her forehead to Evan's, whispering with all the strength left inside her, "Focus your heart on me. Let our bond guide the light." Evan closed his eyes, letting the warmth of her touch steady him, letting the bond fill him with her strength, her courage, her fierce determination. The world around them faded into a blur of light and thunder, their connection expanding like a wave of golden fire that pushed outward through the chamber, touching every wall, every crack, every flaring spark of the rift. The wormhole began to shrink, its edges trembling under the pressure of their combined energy, the swirling red vortex tightening as if wrapped by invisible hands. The Draxion commander clawed desperately at the air, its voice cracking into a metallic shriek. "No, you cannot close the rift. Your bond belongs to us." But the shrinking vortex caught its limbs, dragging the massive creature backward, ripping it from the chamber floor as the energy swallowed it in a storm of red lightning. Final scream dissolving into the collapsing void, Evan gasped, feeling his knees weaken as the force of the rift tried to pull him in too. But Lyria's arms wrapped around him instantly, her tentacles anchoring them to the ground with glowing strength, her voice breaking with fierce emotion. "I am here. I will not let you go." The vortex shrank faster now, devouring its own energy, pulling the remaining debris into its heart until the chamber shook with a final violent boom, and then the light collapsed into a single glowing point before vanishing completely, leaving only silence. Silence so deep it felt like the whole world had paused to breathe again. Evan collapsed into Lyria's arms, exhausted, trembling but alive, her tentacles wrapped around him gently, glowing soft gold as if cradling the fragile remains of the moment. He rested his forehead against her shoulder, breathing her in like she was the only solid thing left in the universe. "You saved me," he whispered. Voice raw and soft, Lyria held him tighter, her eyes shining with emotion she could no longer hide. "We saved each other." When they emerged from the chamber, soldiers and Valerian guards stared with disbelief, some in awe, some in confusion, many trembling from the psychic battle that had just ended. The council stood among the crowd, faces pale, their robes torn by falling debris. their eyes widening when they saw the princess holding a human, as if he were the center of her world. The eldest elder stepped forward, voice shaken. "Princess Lyria, the bond, it is complete." Lyria lifted her chin, her tentacles shimmering with proud golden light. "Yes, and I will not deny it." Whispers rippled through the hall. Arguments rising and falling, fear mixing with hope. Ancient laws trembling under the weight of something that felt bigger than tradition, bigger than history. Evan looked at her, uncertain, afraid of what they would do now. But Lyria squeezed his hand, her voice steady and warm. "What they fear does not matter. What we are cannot be undone." The council stepped closer, their expressions softening as if some ancient truth finally made sense to them. The eldest elder bowed his head slowly. "You have changed the destiny of 2 species." Lyria turned to Evan, the golden glow of her tentacles reflecting in his eyes as she whispered softly, "Not 2 species, just us." Evan smiled weakly, feeling warmth spread through his chest as the bond settled like a calm heartbeat between them. "Then whatever comes next," he breathed, "we face it together." And under the fractured glow of the Valerian moons, among the ruins of battle and the whispers of a future reshaped by fate, a human soldier and an alien princess began the first step of a new destiny, bound not by law or command but by a bond that even the universe could not break.